this lesson, I'm going to show you how to work with color ramps in ArcGIS. We already know how to use them to symbolize our data, but now I'm going to show you how to create your own. While ArcGIS comes with a number of really great color ramps, being able to create your own lets you customize your data displays as you might need to for your own project. Color can be incredibly important, and there are all sorts of different ways to symbolize data, and as we talked about in the first class, those ways that we choose to symbolize data can cause people to infer different things about our data. So it may be important for you to customize your color ramps in order to set the right expectations and the right interpretation of the data. Now, some of you might be thinking right now, well, I signed up for an analysis course. Why are we talking about color? Well, there are a couple reasons for that. The first is that displaying your data is really important to analysis. You need to be able to communicate your data to people once you have your analysis complete. And the second is that the way that courses get chunked on Coursera means that in some ways we occasionally have to just slot some topics into a place that they might fit. There are topics that don't necessarily warrant their own theme in a course, but which we want to make sure that we cover for you to know GIS much more thoroughly, and this is the spot that this best fit into the specialization. So without further ado, let's take a look at setting up some color ramps. So if we go to Properties and Symbology as we're used to, we can go to Quantities, and it gives us a default color ramp here. For those of you who weren't sure what I was talking about, a color ramp being this display or this gradient of colors between one or more colors that we can choose to associate a field value with. So in this case, let's set up household income on these census tracts that we're looking at. And it automatically bins the colors, or bins the data into 5 classes here, and then assigns each of those bins a color based upon picking out a spot along the color ramp that is associated with the values. And if I click Apply, I can set up the data. And just since there are tons of little dark lines in there and we can't really see as well, let's right click. I'll go to Properties for all symbols, and I'm going to turn the outline width to 0 so that we don't have an outline between these features, and I'll click Apply. And now, while we can't see the boundaries, we can see statewide trends a little better. Now, I've shown you this before, but we have a lot of different color options in here, and sometimes enough that it's a little unwieldy to search through. But I do find myself maybe 1 in 10 times when looking at color ramps thinking, you know, none of these are exactly what I want. I can use one of them, but they're not really how I think this data needs to be displayed. And occasionally I'll right click and change it from graphic view to look at the text version to see what it's suggesting I use it for. Like maybe, oh, precipitation. Okay, well, I can click that one and see that that's maybe what some people use for precipitation. But looking at this, I'm just not sure that there's one that I think screams income to me. Maybe one that's red to green or green to red, but we use that for so many things that it just seems almost too alarming with all this red in here. So maybe I want to modify my color ramp, create my own, so that I can make this data a little softer, but still provide the same sort of impact, where red being less income and green being more income. So I'll go to Properties of the color ramp by right-clicking on it, and it brings up 2 color ramps here, and it says Algorithmic color ramps, and that's because we have 4 types of color ramps here. If I click Add, I can see down here what they are. I can create random color ramps, multi-part color ramps, preset color ramps, and algorithmic color ramps, and I'll go through each of these in turn, but we're looking at an algorithmic color ramp right here. Or this main box is a multi-part color ramp, and it has 2 algorithmic color ramps in it. And if I click on one of them and go to Properties, I can see that it's made of 2 colors, and the algorithmic part of the word is that it uses 2 colors and it automatically transitions between them. Now I can make these colors darker and somewhat less rich, but I can make them just go straight to black by sliding that, and I'll leave it there. And then I can also brighten it out and sort of desaturate everything all the way up to white that way. I can also change the way that it assesses the colors and stores the colors and presents them by changing the color algorithm here to something like hue, saturation value, or go down here. And you can see it's a really subtle change just because it's trying to keep the colors constant there, but the slightly different color algorithms result in different reproduction of color. So I'll leave that as the default right now, and let's just change this. Instead of a bright red, let's change it to kind of a moderate orange there. And then click Apply to keep that for now and try it. And the map doesn't yet update. But then let's also soften the green by going to that algorithmic color ramp and going to properties and make it not quite as bright of a green. We can do kind of more of a grassy green. Click apply to that. And I don't have that much variance in here, and so it might not be a good color ramp yet, but let's take a look. I'll click OK. I'll click apply to the map. And yeah, it's a little hard to differentiate between all these colors right now, but it's still a custom color ramp, and we can go back in and tweak it by going to properties again. And maybe I'll make this a slightly brighter orange in here. And I'll make this green a little more distinguishable from the yellow still. Go maybe to that kind of green. Click OK. I'll click apply now. And the map's still a little intense, but I think it's better than it was before. But what if I wanted to go even more colors? I don't have to just stick to these two colors. So if I go to properties, I'm going to take a look at this color, and I know I chose that one, but in case I didn't know I chose that one, or I couldn't get back here, or I had a custom color, I can go to more colors, and I can grab these values here, and make sure you check whether it's HSV or RGB or CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, hue, saturation value, and red, green, blue. These are different color algorithms. And I'll leave it as HSV right now and note that it's 100, 100, 45 if I wanted to reproduce that color. And I can put that in again somewhere else to use that color. So if I want to add another color ramp, I'm going to add another algorithmic color ramp to this, and it just inputs a default for me. But I'll go to properties, and I'll put color 1 as more colors, just like we did. And I'll put in that color that I memorized right there, that I remember, 100, 145 to match the color. I'll click OK. And note that it kind of makes the green just keep going, because this algorithmic color ramp that's taking up a third of it is just one color. Well, if I want to add another color just like before, I can, to maybe differentiate between the higher income scales, I can then go add a green as a color 2 there, and click OK. And that's a little vague there. So let's go to properties. Since the green's a little close to yellow, maybe we'd add in a blue or something like that, just to represent the highest amount. And I'll click OK there. And we could even break up the classes a little more to make it more refined by setting 7 classes here. I'll click apply. And we can see that the highest incomes are concentrated in urban areas now, the kind of smallest census tracts that have the most people. And we've created our own custom algorithmic color ramp. If I want to use this again in the future, I can save it to the style. The style is what Esri and ArcGIS use to keep track of these different color ramps and a lot of other things in your map document. We haven't gone through it in depth, but this will make it accessible in the future. And I can name it income and click OK. And now it'll stay in my list of options here. And if I go off of graphic view, I can see that it uses my name in this list, and it sorts it in order of the name. Okay, let's take one quick look at what the other color ramps are like too. These are the most common here, where we have a multi-part color ramp with algorithmic color ramps within it. But I'll show you, you can add another multi-part color ramp inside of this, and it shows up as black right now. But if I click on it and go to properties, we get the same sort of box. So again, this here is a multi-part color ramp, but you can nest them if you wanted to. Since this evenly divides up the color ramp by how many things you have, you might want to nest them in order to make one part have lots of different colors. This would make the last quarter of the color ramp have whatever colors are in this box. So let's take a look really quickly. I'll just do a random color ramp to illustrate. So it divides up by quarters, but then that last color ramp is just this colors here. And then I just showed you briefly there what a random color ramp is, but basically it's exactly what it sounds like. It just gives you random colors, and I can go to properties and set some different options for it here. And I could limit it to a different set of colors. Maybe we'd start at hue 90 and end at 360 on this circular wheel of colors, so it's excluding a certain segment of the color spectrum. And we could say we only want more saturated colors, and then for the value, maybe we'll start that at 52. And that way we can control what colors we have. Or maybe we say we want to end at 90 and start at 0 and use only that part of the color spectrum, since that maybe helps you see a little more of what it's choosing. I can click OK. And that's a random color ramp. And then the one we haven't looked at is the preset color ramp. And here, let's remove these so that we can see this all a little better. And then there's the preset color ramp, which is sort of like an algorithmic color ramp, but where you're very specific about which colors to use. So each of these is explicitly defined, and it will pick colors out of here. And I could change this from reddish to kind of bluish by going up this chain of blue colors here in the color palette. I could also do other things, but I know that I would personally not get it quite right to go choosing my own colors here. And if I'm going to do that, I might go choose an algorithmic color ramp instead, where I can more easily see what I'm doing. So if I do that and click OK, there's my preset color ramp built in right here within my multi-color ramp, my multi-part color ramp, and then alongside my algorithmic color ramps. And again, if I wanted to, once I've built it, I could right-click on it and save it to style as a separate one. Not that this is a particularly good color ramp here, but if I modify my color ramp, I can save it again as something else. Okay, that's it for this lecture. In this lecture, I showed you how to create your own color ramps to style your data and how to save those color ramps to your style so you can use them in the future. I showed you 4 types of color ramps: the multi-part color ramp that all color ramps are built inside of, the algorithmic color ramp, which I think is the most useful in most cases, the random color ramp, and then the preset color ramp. This should help you style your data more effectively in the future. See you next time.